Hello everybody, I'm Ian, and today I'm going to be reviewing the much anticipated Hellboy the board game.
This video is brought to you by Meeple Times. Go to meepletimes.com to find many board games at buy one, get one half off. It's also brought to you by Game Booster, a Facebook group dedicated to find you the best deals on board games.
Now before we begin, let's go ahead and get down the table and see how it plays, but first I do want to say this is the Kickstarter edition. I would try to point out the differences between my version and the retail version, but overall I try to use the retail components when possible. Okay, so this is not an actual scenario. I just set up some random boards in order to show you how it is played. And I want to also say that this is not a full rules explanation. It is simply to get an idea of how the game is played. Now the first thing you're going to do is you're going to choose what case file you want to go through in this mission. So you're going to choose one of these, and what you're going to do is flip over these cards. You're going to read the text, flip over the cards, and that is how you're going to build your map. It's going to instruct you on how to build your map. It's going to instruct you how to build this deck of doom, which is basically an event deck. It's also going to instruct you how to build this encounter deck, and also what monsters are part of this scenario and where to put the insight markers, which these particular are part of the Kickstarter exclusives, along with these minis are part of the Kickstarter exclusive as well. But it's going to tell you exactly how to set everything up. So once you have it set up, it's going to have you place some of these cards in the in-play area, and then it's going to have you discard some other cards. I'm not going to actually go through the deck, so that way I don't accidentally spoil something. So in order to start the game, what you're going to do is on every next available room, you're going to place one encounter card face down. That means that that room has not been discovered yet. And on your turn, you can use a free action in order to open the door and explore the next room. When you do that, you're going to flip an encounter over, and then you're going to place an encounter on the all next unexplored rooms. That way you can keep an idea of what rooms are still left to be explored. And then you're going to resolve what it says on the text. This particular text, it tells you in spot 1 you're going to post minion C, which in this case is going to be this one right here. Spot 2 you're going to minion D, and then you're going to place a clue marker, which these are the Kickstarter exclusive clue markers. The other ones are just normal tokens. And the last one you're going to place scenery 1. I'm going to go in and give you a closer look at this card. Now some cards do have text at the bottom as well, in which case those will take effect. So I'm going to place a scenery in that room. Now, once you have the room populated, you can begin to take your actions. Now, actions are used based off of these player boards and the cubes on the player boards. So each character gets 3 cubes. That means you can take 3 actions. And when you take an action, you're going to take a cube and move it off of your board. Now, along with that, every character also has special actions that may require more cubes. So if you would spend an action that takes 2 cubes, you would just move 2 cubes off your board like that. Now most of the actions are listed right on the player board. You can fight, shoot, or investigate. Defend is obviously only done when you are being attacked. So let's go ahead and say Liz Sherman is going to use her gun, because she does have to start with a gun. And she's going to use her gun to shoot into this room. Now because of line of sight, she can only shoot this monster right here. She can't shoot diagonal. Now when you do that, you're then going to look at your player board again. You're going to look at the player board and see which color dice you use in order to test that action. So she uses red dice. So what you're going to do is take always 3 dice, and then one of these blue dice, which is kind of a modifier die. And then you are just going to go ahead and roll the dice. You're going to look at the values and add them up. So you're going to have 2, 4, 5 as a value. In this case, I rolled a 5 against this monster right here. So I am then going to look at their card and see that they have a resilience of 2, which is kind of like a shield, and they have a health of 6. So I rolled a 5, which means of those 5, 2 of them are gone. So I did a total of 3 damage. So you're going to take 3 damage markers like this, and you're going to place them on or near the miniature, just like that, saying that he has 3 damage. And you can try and stack them. I find that they don't stack very well. And they say even maybe put them on the miniature, but once again, I find that doesn't work very well either. Okay, another thing that you can do is obviously attack, which I'm not going to go through, but Hellboy, for example, can use red dice to attack. Now for pure explanation, I'm going to talk about how upgrading and downgrading dice work. So for example, when you are shooting into a room with multiple monsters, or maybe you're shooting past multiple monsters. So let's say Liz, instead of shooting this frog monster, she wants to shoot this one way back here. Well, in that case, she's going to start with her 3 red dice, And then because she has to shoot past this monster, she has to downgrade one of the dice. And now this is what I'm going to roll in order to hit this monster. So you do the same thing, you roll the dice, and then you evaluate how many values you have. Now let's go and take a look at the blue dice and see what all the different sides are. You have a reroll, in which case you can reroll any of the dice except for the blue one. You have a single hit, which is basically another pip on the dice, another success. You have a two success, and then you have a ×2 success, which means you can take one of these numbers, whatever number you want, and multiply it ×2, but only one die. And the last one is this skull marker, which what that does is it actually means you have to discard your highest die. In which case I can discard either the orange die or the red die, in which case my value would now be 2, which is not enough in this monster's case to get past his resilience. So that's one effect that is going to downgrade your dice. There are other things that can downgrade your dice as well, but also things you can do to upgrade your dice. You can spend an additional cube to upgrade your dice, or even another character can spend a cube to upgrade another die. So even if you end up downgrading your dice, you can do things to help upgrade them as well. There are items that also can upgrade them, and different scenario effects can upgrade them as well. So obviously attacking is one action you can do, and you can spend a cube to do that. You can also spend a cube in order to move. Now when you move, you can move 2 spaces. But you can't just move through spaces that have a monster. If you leave a space that has a monster, you must do one of 2 things. 1, you can take a damage. 2, if you don't want to take a damage, the monsters actually chase you, and you have to pull them into your new space, which might be something you want to do if you don't want to take a damage. Another thing you do is actually examine. So examine is this eyeball symbol on the board, and you just examine a clue marker, and depending on the value depends on how much this clue track moves up. And when you get these insight markers, it is very, very good for you, and depending on the scenario, depends on what exactly they do. You just place it on your board though, and keep it for future use. Now, because of different effects, you could also have frog swarms appear on the board, and frog swarms are very bad because if you get 2 frog swarms anywhere on the board, for every 2, you're going to increase the doom track by 1 in the end phase. So another action you can take is you can take an action to clear the frog swarms. These do not take up space, you cannot attack them, they are solely for increasing doom, and you must take a special action in order to take them off the board. So another thing that can come on the board is fire. Now fire is kind of different depending on your character. If you want to leave a space that is on fire, you must take a damage. But just like the frog swarms, instead of leaving the space, you can spend an action to clear the fire. So that way you won't take a damage. So after everyone takes their actions, it is then the rest phase. Now you can choose to take the rest phase or not. If you do choose to rest, this doom marker is going to continue to increase. And remember, if it reaches a certain mark, depending on the case, certain things will happen, usually bad things. So increasing the doom track is not a good thing to do. But if you rest, you can investigate, in which case you can increase this clue marker. You can also recuperate, you can heal some of your damage, or you can secure, which is actually taking some of those frog swarms and infernos off the board. So while it's not a great thing to do all the time, it may actually help you to take advantage of the rest phase. And then during the end phase, you're going to recover all of your cubes back to 3 again, and then you're going to draw from the deck of doom and resolve whatever the text says. And after you go through all of that, the beginning of the next phase actually starts with the enemy phase, where you resolve what is on their cards. And you keep doing these rounds until you complete whatever objective you have in your case file. Remember, there are multiple ways to end this case file. It can end by investigating a certain amount of times, or it can end by doom increasing to a certain amount. Some cases have 2 or 3 or even 4 branching paths, so each one is very different, and so it does allow a lot of replayability. Now, no matter how it happens, eventually there will be a final confrontation, in which case usually a boss appears, and the case is going to tell you exactly what to place on the board. You're going to clear this board right here of all of the cards and all of the insane markers and everything, and you're going to flip it over, and this now becomes the track for the monster. You're going to place the enemy card there, even their behavior deck. So how they behave is going to change. It's going to tell you exactly what attacks to put in this deck. and then you're going to place their health wherever it may be. Now you're going to enter a new phase where you're going to have to complete the final confrontation, which is usually defeating a boss. Now, one last thing before I go, I do want to talk about damage, because I really do like how damage is done in Hellboy. When somebody takes a damage, you're going to take these damage markers and place them on their track. Each character has a different size of damage. So Liz, for example, has a total of 5. And once that fills up, it does not mean that character is dead or knocked out, how the game calls it. What actually happens is after you fill up the track, you can continue to take damage, and what you do is you actually flip them over. And when you flip them over, it is now going to downgrade a certain thing on your action. So in this case, it is going to downgrade 1 investigation die. Now in this case, you rolls yellow dice. Yellow are the lowest of the dice. So if she were to investigate, she would only be able to roll 2 dice. And as she takes more damage, you would continue to flip these, and they do different things. Like this one, you actually lose a cube. This one, it's a -2 to range attacks. This one is a downgrade of dice for melee attacks. And once all of those are flipped over, the character is officially knocked out, in which case you remove the character from the board, you place a cube where they were, and they are now officially knocked out. Now, knocked out doesn't mean they're gone. It just means that every round you have to perform the knockout action in order to hopefully come back and keep on fighting. And each game ends depending on the case, but overall it's if all of the characters are knocked out, you lose, or if you defeat the monster or complete whatever the case file says, you win. And that is how you play Hellboy the board game. Okay, let's go and put up my official gamer's review and talk first about the genre and theming. This is Hellboy. Now, granted, it is a pretty generic, I would say, dungeon crawler, but this feels like Hellboy. Hellboy can go in and starts punching people, while other characters may stay back and shoot. Other characters have been investigating, and you can mix and match the characters to get a completely different feel of the game. And also, this isn't legacy, and there's no progression, there's no upgrading. Each character is their best selves every single mission, so you don't have to worry about keeping track of stats or anything like that. There is one thing I didn't show you with items, but there are different items that you can draft or pay in the beginning of every mission, so each mission can feel a little different. I really like the genre and theming of the game. Art and components. The miniatures are fantastic. Almost everything in this game is really good. The dice, while I don't think the dice colors are great, I do think they do serve a good purpose, being able to differentiate between the worst dice and the best dice. And the cards aren't linen finished, but I still think they're okay. Now, my one biggest complaint with the art is honestly the board tiles themselves. Now, while I do think it is very comic book accurate in the sense that it matches the feel of and the colors of the comic book, what I do think is it kind of mismatches with the miniatures themselves, because the miniatures look rather realistic in their style. I say realistic, but obviously they're monsters and different things like that, but they're relatively realistic where the boards look like comic books, so it kind of is a little mismatch of a style. Not terrible, just something that I think is a little weird. Another really bad thing with the components are these damage markers. You saw me in my little run through. They're terrible. They're absolutely horrible. I wish there was something better. I do have a fix for it. Just get little dice, and you can put the dice, fits perfectly on most of the miniatures. So those are absolutely horrible. Other than that, and then my few gripes with the art, I do like the components. Mechanics. Okay, this is it. It's a dungeon crawler. There's no doubt about that. But the mechanic of upgrading and downgrading dice, I think, is fantastic. The fact that you have to downgrade your dice to shoot around people, so you want to place your stuff strategically in order to have the minimum dice downgrade, I think is a perfect mechanic. Well, it does feel like a dungeon crawl. Other than that, I think the dice mechanic definitely makes up for all of the blandness that may be in this game. I also really like the case files. Each one feels very unique in how you go through it, and you have to read each side of the card. Very legacy style in the way that it branches off, and you may, depending on how you complete the objective, you may have a different case this time than you did last time, even if you're playing the same case. So I do definitely like the case files, the Deck of Doom, the encounter cards. I do like most of those other things as well. Ease of play. This is not an entry-level dungeon crawler, but I would say this is like the second dungeon crawler someone could do. there's a lot of strategy that needs to go through, especially with the dice upgrading. And so somebody may need to be coached a little bit in order to understand how to best upgrade their dice based on the scenarios. So, not a super hard game, not the hardest dungeon crawler I've done, but it is definitely not the easiest either. Replayability, the retail version does come with 6 set cases, but it does allow you to replay them in the sense of they have different branches. So you can play the same one again, get a slightly different story, have different rearrangement of monsters. Even though it may feel limited, I think it does have a lot of replayability. Now that being said, in the Kickstarter edition, they do have 2 more case files, and also they do provide a stack of generic case files in order to build your own cases, which I think is phenomenal. And also the retail version only comes with 4 generic monster types, and so that may feel a little old as you continue to play. I've already started mixing in some of the Kickstarter monsters, and it has definitely helped with the replayability already. So the retail version might be a little low, but overall I think it's decent on replayability. And strategy, like I said, the main strategy in this game is based off the dice mechanics. Knowing the best way to position yourself and what actions to take in what order in order to not have to downgrade your dice. That is how to strategically play this game. Another thing I forgot to mention in my playthrough video, there's no turns in the game. You can talk as a team and anyone can take different actions. So you can get somebody in there to start punching and then move out of the way so someone else can start shooting, or vice versa. Someone can start shooting a person and then run in and punch, another character can run in and punch them. So there's no turns, and so that allows a lot of strategy going back and forth trying to figure out the best way to utilize your dice rolls to get the best outcome. So overall, I really do like Hellboy the board game. I find it just a lot of fun. Is it super difficult? No. Is it super thinky? No. It's much like the Hellboy movies. If you just want to go and have a good time and not nitpick about, oh, this was not very good, or this was kind of janky, or whatever. If you just want to go and have a good time, Hellboy the board game definitely delivers on that. So overall, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10 because while not perfect, I think it is definitely a very fun time. So I've been Ian. Thanks for watching my review of Hellboy the board game. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe, and so you can come back and see more reviews and other board game related topics. And remember, whether you're a heavy gamer or light gamer, always keep it fun.